I'm a cyclist. And probably straight away you can go, does he shave his legs? Does he wear lycra? Well, the answer to the first question, does he shave his legs, is no. Do I wear lycra? The answer is yes. Do I look good? Yes. Cycling has been a habit of mine for a little while. I'm a flat person. I don't like hills. I like it nice and even and flat. I don't do mountains. Don't like mountains. I have a T-shirt that says Le Tour de France, which means the Tour of France, you know the cycling one, Tour of France. It's a genuine one. My daughter was in Paris last year or the year before, and I said, you've got to buy me something French, and she bought me the T-shirt. And she bought my 3 grandsons T-shirt. So when she goes out, my daughter goes out, they stand out because they're all in yellow, and if they get lost, she can pick them up. I don't like mountains, but I do appreciate their beauty. I've been to the Blue Mountains, and if you've ever been to the Blue Mountains, they are blue, aren't they? They are blue. You look out there and it's for some reason blue. I've climbed a few mountains. I've climbed Mount Kintamani in Bali. Sandra and I climbed that one. Not really a climb, you get up and bus and you go up the top. I've seen the Cradle Mountains in Tasmania. I've lived on the side of a volcano. Mount Gambier in South Australia is an extinct volcano. We had a house, we lived on there, and I ran around the top of the crater. It's full of water, and I don't think it'll ever go pop. I've climbed halfway out Mount Timbergargan because they won't let you go any further. But I like the flat. Hills are good for going down, and I like it that way. I can pick up plenty of speed going down the hill. I get up to 40, 50 kilometres an hour. Some cyclists get up to 70 or 80, but 40 or 50 do me. And it's pretty good. The wind's blowing in the air, so I like going down. I often pray when I'm cycling, which is probably not a good idea because you can wander off sometimes and then you wander back. So sometimes I pray and lose my way. It was always there. I knew it was there. It had always been there. Every morning I woke up, it was there. My grandfather and my great uncle had bought a property called Cooyamalta. Cooyamalta in Aboriginal language means plenty of fresh water. And for some reason, my great uncle wanted to sell half the property. It's quite a big property, over 3,000 acres. And he wanted to sell half of it. So my dad bought half. And he went into sort of a loose partnership with my grandfather. But it was still there. Every morning I woke up, it was there. Dad decided he'd build a small cottage on a flat piece of land next to a road, close to a permanent creek. And then there was this little bit of scrub. But it was always there. And I was going to climb it. I was going to climb it. I was determined to climb it. And there it was, TUCKNOTT Hill. I could sit on the deck and you could watch the foxes come down from their dens. And they were after the sheep and the chooks, or the lambs and the chooks. Sheep were too big. So down they'd come. But we had working dogs, and they'd keep them away. Dad had a gun. They'd keep them away too. And I was only 8 years old. And I was going to climb that hill because it was a mountain to me. My dad had taught me to use a rifle by the time I was 8. And I just imagined myself sitting on the deck, looking down the sights of the barrel at a fox that was wandering down. But the day came that I decided I'd climb it. So I went across the road, climbed across the creek, went through TUCKNOTT scrub, and this hill was steep. There was hardly a tree on it. There were rocky outcrops. There were rabbit warrens, burrows. We climbed the hill and I got to the top. And up there it was just crisp and clean and clear. You could see for miles. I could see the Todd's Reservoir. I could see trucks. I could see the patchwork quilts of other farms. I could see everything. It was so clear. I could see my Uncle Fred's farm on the other side. It was just so clear. And it was great being up there. The slopes were slippery to get up there, but it was great. On the way down, I ran. I ran because I couldn't stop. If you've ever had one of those experiences where you've been running when you were little and you can't stop, you're going down a slope or something, you just cannot stop. And I was jumping over rocks and logs and slipping and sliding. It was so much fun. When I got to the bottom, I was absolutely breathless, out of breath. I climbed it a few more times, but that was the greatest. And I was only 10. What's your mountain? Ask God and He'll give you a mountain. A mountain explains many things about me, and it probably explains many things about you. But the air up there is crisp and clear and clean, and you can see. Abraham wanted a son. Sarah wanted a son, but they were old. God promised Abraham a son, and his offspring would be as the stars in the sky, if you could count them. And in Genesis 15, verse 1 to 5, he says, "After this, the word of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision. 'Do not be afraid, Abram. I'm your shield and your very great reward.' But Abram said, 'O sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless? And the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus.' And Abram said, 'You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be their heir.' And the word of the Lord came to him, 'This man will not be your heir, but a son coming from your own body will be your heir.' He took him outside and said, 'Look up at the heavens and count the stars, if indeed you can count them.' Then he said to him, 'So shall your offspring be.'" Abraham had a mountain. After Isaac was born, God told Isaac to go to a mountain and sacrifice him there. I bet you he didn't tell Sarah that was what was going on. But we would question why. We would say, what is it all about? But Abraham went. He seems to do a lot of going. They walked for 3 days. And then finally Abraham said to his servants, "You wait here and we'll go ahead." 3 days. They walked for 3 days. Wasn't Jesus in the tomb for 3 days? Isn't there a similarity there, perhaps? Isaac and Abraham walked on. Not talking, apparently. Then Isaac says, "Dad, what's with the sacrifice?" Because prior to that, Abraham had put the wood on Isaac's shoulder and he carried the knife and the fire. What's with the sacrifice? He said, "God will provide a sacrifice." And God did. He provided the ram. In Genesis 22, which is just a little way over the page, Genesis 22 and 6, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father." "Yes, my son." Abraham replied, "The wood, fire and the wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two of them went on together, apparently in silence. I think I'd have a lot more to say. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abram built an altar and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abram, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God because you have not withheld from me your only son." Mountains give you a sense of majesty and clarity. Moses was a very reluctant servant of God, but God said to him, "Go and set your people free." But Moses argued with God. I don't think I'd argue with God if he was talking to me. Who am I? God said, "Bring your people out of Egypt and worship on the mountain." Moses was given the 10 Commandments on a mountain, a law of love and life. It's easy to see on a mountain because you have clarity and the air is clear up there. At the end of Israel's journey through the wilderness, God said to Moses, "Go and climb Mount Sinai." And he showed him all the land he promised Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. From the mountain he could see, but he could not enter. Deuteronomy tells us a little bit more about it. Deuteronomy 32. Deuteronomy 32, 49. Go up into the Abraham range to Mount Nebo in Moab. Cross from Jericho and view Canaan, the land I'm giving the Israelites as their own possession. There on the mountain that you have climbed, you will die and be gathered to your people. You will die and be gathered to your people. Bit of a sacrifice because Moses had led those people for an awful long time and he wasn't going to be allowed to enter the promised land. But he said Moses died on that mountain. He was 120 years old. His eyes were not weak, nor his strength was gone. Deuteronomy 34 says, and Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. He buried him in Moab, in the valley opposite Beth-Peor. But to this day no one knows where his grave is. Moses was 120 years old when he died, yet his eyes were not weak, nor his strength gone. Just a bit of speculation. I just wonder, because I do the wonder. I wonder. What would it have been like, because Moses was brought up as a prince in the palace of Pharaoh. What would it have been like if he had not killed the Egyptian? Because he was 40 years old, killed the Egyptian, was found out, fled into the desert or the wilderness, stayed there for 40 years. God spoke to him, told him to go back and lead his people out. Would have God used him some other way? I wonder if God would have done something differently. There on the mountain was a meeting of law, love, and grace. Elijah climbed Mount Carmel to challenge a nation. If the Lord is God, worship him, but if Baal is God, worship him. And God sent fire from heaven. If you turn to 1 Kings 18 and 38 and 39. And it tells us there that God answered Elijah. He answered his prayer. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. When all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, "The Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God." Monasteries, forts, castles are built on high grounds. They're there so they can see and be seen. If you're in a high place, you're much closer to God. Jesus, right at the beginning of his ministry, just after his baptism, went into the wilderness. And there basically he starved himself, I guess. And the devil came to tempt him. Temptation is not sin. Came to tempt him. One instance, he took him to the highest point of the temple. And he said to him, "If you're God, throw yourself down from here, because the angels will protect you. And he said, it is written, don't tempt the Lord your God. Then he took him to a high mountain, and he was shown all the kingdoms of all the world. And he said, if you bow down and worship me, I will give you all these. Jesus replied, it is written, do not tempt the Lord your God. Jesus defeated the tempter on a mountain. Jesus met people on the mountain, the everyday, ordinary people, and he blessed them. In Matthew 5, a very extraordinary passage, Matthew 5, verse 1, Jesus was on the mountain and blessed the people. And it says, now when he saw the crowds, he went up on the mountainside and he sat down. His disciples came to him and he began to teach them, saying, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. A small boy came to Jesus on a mountain. He moved a mountain, that lad. He had a mountain load of faith. When he offered Jesus a small boy's lunch, 5 barley loaves, 2 small fish. You know how big 5 barley loaves are and 2 small fish? Forget about a loaf of bread. 2 small fish, sardines. Have you ever eaten a sardine? Sardines are about this big and about that thick and don't taste very nice. But 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. He offered Jesus he offered him his lunch. And he had the faith to feed 5,000 people, and Jesus did. Think about the logistics. I like to think about logistics. The Bible says there were 5,000 men, which means there were probably 5,000 women, which means there were, let's say there were 2 children for every man and woman, there were 10,000 children. So there were 20,000 people on the mountain with Jesus. Just the logistics of his voice carrying and speaking is amazing that 20,000 people would hear. You've been to the entertainment centre when there's been a show on and you sit there and you go, well, there might be 5, 10, 6,000 people there. Got all the stuff going, but Jesus' voice could be heard. But can you imagine the logistics of feeding 20,000 people? It is a miracle. But just imagine handing it out. If you were to feed 20,000 people, you would need several semi-trailers to do it and lots of helpers to hand it out. And yet it says the disciples distributed the food. How long would it have taken? But it was a miracle. It probably didn't take as long as we think. A blessing and a miracle on a mountain. If you have the higher ground, you have the advantage. If you're lost, what is possibly the first thing you do? You look for a place where you can see a compass point, a trig point. A trig point is usually a concrete structure for which surveyors use to find their way. TUCKNOTT Hill had a trig point. Zacchaeus is an interesting character. What would a grown man be doing up a tree? Can you imagine the sight of a grown man, robes flowing, running, climbing up a tree? Would you do it at your age, climb a tree? I see lots of kids in my school grounds try to climb trees. We have a no-climb tree policy. No, we don't really. But a kid climbing a tree, okay. An adult climbing a tree, I don't know, he must have been terribly desperate, because all your dignity seems to drop away in my image of a man climbing a tree, an adult climbing a tree. Zacchaeus met Jesus in the tree. Zacchaeus was a short man. He wanted to see Jesus. He ran ahead. He climbed a sycamore tree. The Bible even tells you the type of tree. It wasn't a tree. It wasn't a gum tree. It wasn't any old tree. It was a sycamore tree, a sycamore fig tree. Don't know why. Maybe it's easy to climb. I'm not sure. Never seen a sycamore fig tree. But he climbed it. Up a tree you can see, but you can be seen. The children in my playground the other day were climbing trees and they thought I couldn't see them. They were as easy as to pick out as anything. He could be seen. Jesus saw him. That day, grace and mercy met. Jesus went home with Zacchaeus. Jesus went home with Zacchaeus. Doesn't that hit you full on? What would it be like if it read, Jesus went home with Terry? Jesus went home with Colin. Jesus went home with Lamon. Jesus went home with you. How would you feel about that? Because he said, come down. I'm going home with you. What? Would that make your heart flutter? It'd make mine. I couldn't talk. I couldn't talk. Jesus led his disciples up a mountain, and they saw Jesus talking to Elijah and Moses. Imagine seeing that. They call it the Transfiguration. Imagine seeing that. Jesus talking to Elijah and Moses. And the disciples were just, I don't know, one of them said, I think it's a good idea if I go and build a little hut for you and them, because he didn't know what to say. He didn't know how to respond. Imagine that. Imagine seeing that and being there, where love, law, grace and mercy collide to form our salvation. A gift we do not deserve, but a gift, nevertheless, we can claim. Everything looks much better on top of the mountain. On his triumphal entry into Jerusalem, Jesus paused for a moment looking over Jerusalem. I've only seen pictures of it, but I got a feeling that some people said it's pretty magic in Jesus' time, because apparently the temple was white and it glistened and gleamed in the sun. He was looking at the magnificence of Jerusalem and he weeps. In Luke 19:41 it says, and Jesus wept over the city because he could see what was going to happen to it. He knew and understood. He didn't want it to happen, but he recognised that the people had not recognised it. Christ is on a mountain. He's weeping for you and me, and we need to start climbing. Lighthouses are built on high places. Lighthouses have a purpose. They shine light so sailors can see, ships can be saved. And Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness. My dad told me a story. My dad was a bit of a storyteller. A lot of stories I remember, some I forget. But I remember him telling me this one. He said during World War II, there were two enemy warships stalking each other in the dark Atlantic Ocean. And because it was blackout, because they were stalking each other and because it was night, the crew were confined down in deck, so no movement could be seen. One sailor, a bit sick of being down there, decided he'd sneak out, have a cigarette. He got his cigarette and lit it. Unfortunately, the enemy ship saw that cigarette light. They were miles away, or kilometres away. Light shines. Jesus met his Father on a mountain, pleading that this cup to be taken from him. But who else was there that could take the cup? Before the whip struck, before the nails were driven into Jesus' hands, he was bleeding. He had begun to shed blood for you and for me. Blood mixed with love and mercy. Just have a look at Luke 22:42. Luke 22:42. Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will but yours be done. An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him, and being in anguish he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. Blood mixed with love and mercy. On a hill called Golgotha, Jesus died for us. The ultimate act of love and mercy. John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, so that anyone who believes in him can be saved." Jesus died on a mountain between heaven and earth, between two criminals. One on the top of the mountain seeing Jesus, the view was clear, forgiven. The other blinded by the darkness, lost. Just over the page in Luke, maybe not over the page in yours, but Luke 23:33. When they came to the place called the Skull, there they crucified him along with the criminals, one on the right, the other on their left. And if you go down to 39, it says, one of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God," he said. "Since you are under the same sentence, we are punished justly. We are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong." If you want to fight a battle or a war, you seek the highest ground. You seek the highest ground. Even when we were kids, we always found the highest ground to have our fun. During World War I, there was a hill called Hill 60. It was no more than a bump on a very flat plain. But it was higher ground, and the enemy held it. So the Allies brought in some Aussie miners, I believe they were Queenslanders, and engineers. And they tunnelled under Hill 60. And they laid thousands of tons of explosive and blew up Hill 60. Down here sometimes it doesn't look very good. But up there on the mountain, where the air is clear and you can see, it looks a whole lot better. If I could sing, I would sing this, but I can't sing, so I won't. So I'll just read it. I'm pressing on the upward way. New heights I'm gaining every day. Still praying as I'm onward bound. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand by faith on heaven's tabled land. A higher place than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I want to live above the world, though Satan's darts at me are hurled, for faith has caught the joyful sound, the song of saints on higher ground. I want to scale the utmost heights and catch a glimpse of glory bright, but still I'll pray till heaven I've found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I don't know whether you've ever been on an ocean and it's just you. I used to be a sea scout, and I remember sailing on Yachting World Cadets and canoeing. I remember being out in the big bay in Port Lincoln, where I come from, Boston Harbour, just me, on my own, alone, in the big ocean. John Donne wrote, "No man is an island entirely of itself. Every man is a piece of a continent and a piece of the main." The air is clear and fresh up there on TUCKNOTT Hill, on the mountain. You can see for kilometres. You can see as far as the eye will allow you to see. A seminary professor was on holiday in Tennessee, and his wife and him stopped in a restaurant to have a meal. While they were waiting for their meal, they noticed a distinguished-looking gentleman moving amongst the tables. And he was coming closer and closer to them, and he was talking to the people in the restaurant. And you get that feeling, you go, oh, please, I don't want him to come and talk to us. Just go that way. But no, he came straight to them, and he asked them who they were, what they were doing, why they were there. And when he found out he was a pastor, a professor, he sat down with them and he said, I want to tell you a story. He said, over there, at the bottom of that mountain, there was an unmarried mother, and she had a child. And the child, as the child grew up, he was always taunted and bullied. There were whispers and stares and looks. And people would always say, who's your daddy? Who's your daddy? The young lad would go to church, but he'd always sneak out before the benediction, before the end. So he didn't have to put up with the looks and the stares and the questions. Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy? But one day, he went to church and there was a new minister, and he finished fairly quickly and he didn't have the opportunity to get out as fast as he wanted to. And so he was stuck. And so he had to put up with the looks and the stares and the whispers. Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy? And as he got to the door to shake the minister's hand, the minister looked at him and said, son, who's your daddy? Almost intuitively, the pastor went, there's something going on here. And he said, I know who your daddy is. He patted him on the shoulder and said, you're a son of God. The older man said, if it hadn't been for that pastor, I wouldn't have made anything of myself. And he left. The visiting seminary professor called the waitress over and he said, who was that man? And he said, oh, everybody knows him around here. He's Ben Hooper. He used to be the governor of Tennessee. He started at the bottom of the mountain and he climbed to the top as a child of God. Spurgeon said, we shall most certainly attain the summit, rest our weary feet thereon, and dwell with God forever. I started at the bottom of TUCKNOTT Hill and reached the top as a child of God. You can do the same. The air is fresh, clean, clear, and you can see for many kilometres from up on the mountain.
To help you understand God's Word in a whole new way, go to goodnewsunlimited.com. You can sign up there to get your free devotional delivered to you each day. This program has been paid for by the partners and friends of Good News Unlimited. Word spreads fast.